Hello, I want to take you through a really easy craft that anybody can do using anything from their home. It's decoupage. You can use any box and cover it with any paper, cards, old cards, magazines, any material you like, and come up with a really nice effect. So there are lots of things that can be decoupaged. You can use stone, such as this. You could make yourself a lovely Christmas box and layer it with different items and put in a nice surprise for your loved one. It says have a wonderful Christmas time. You can make Christmas decorations, and I'm going to show you how to finish off a Christmas box that I've been making for a friend. It's a jewellery box. It was really old and scrappy, but I just decided to use this tester paint that I had in the cupboard at home to just put a couple of layers on to prime the box. And then what I've done is I've used a napkin, one remaining napkin that I had from last New Year's Eve, to cover the box, and it's got a really nice effect. So what I'm doing here is I'm just putting in a layer of PVA glue it's got watered down, and I'm just sticking on these little triangles. You don't have to have triangles at all, but I've just used a shape that I thought would give me good coverage for the box, and also would have not a too perfect finish, because I want it to continue to have that sort of rustic feel. But you do whatever you think is easiest for you or more suitable for the thing that you're making. I really encourage you to not go out and buy something, but to be challenged by working from the items that you have at home, simply from your cupboard. And in that way you can produce something that's really beautiful for a friend or family member this Christmas. There you are. And what happens with decoupage is that it goes on and it looks like it will never dry, and it looks quite messy, but then it really sort of dries to produce a beautiful pattern. As this is not quite dry now yet, but it will dry to be really lovely. So I'd encourage you to think about not just making a box, but you can make Christmas decorations and other lovely items for Christmas. And when you've done that, why don't you post them on our Lansdowne Facebook site?
Good evening, I'm Rachel, and now I'm going to show you how to make your very own paper angel. So to make one, you're going to need to start with a piece of white A4 paper, and it needs to be cut down into one piece that's 20 centimetres by 10 and another piece that's 10 centimetres square. So I'm just using a craft knife on the board for speed, because I've got some measurements on there which makes cutting to the sizes nice and easy. So just cut that one down a bit. So that's one that's 10 centimetres square, and this one is going to be 20 centimetres by 10 centimetres. So there we go, all ready. Now I'm going to score them at 1 centimetre intervals, so that when we come to fold them up, they fold a bit easier. So I'm just going to use a blunt knife from the kitchen, but if you're careful, you could use the back of a craft knife, making sure that you don't actually cut the paper as you score, or you could use a used up ballpoint pen. Basically anything that will leave a nice crisp line as you score down. So I'm using the lines on the board to tell me where 1 centimetre is, but if you haven't got one of those, then you can just mark it out with a ruler and pencil first, just so you know where 1 centimetre intervals are. So making good progress through this. Just keep going till you get to the end. Nearly there. And then one more to go. There we go. So that's the long one done, and we'll now do the same on the shorter one. So all we're doing is marking out the lines so that when we come to fold it, it's a little bit easier and the lines are nice and evenly spread apart, because it's all too easy when you're just folding a concertina for it all to go a bit wobbly all over the place. So there we go. The next thing that we're going to do is now concertina up both pieces of paper using those score lines as a guide. So you can take your time to make sure your folds are nice and even and parallel. So that's the shorter one done, and we're now going to go for the longer one. So just keeping it nice and crisp as we fold it up. So you can take a little bit more time than I am here, just to make sure that everything is really nice and neat and even. So there we go. The next thing you're going to need to do is to take a needle and some thread. So I've just got some white sewing thread, but you could use something a bit glittery or some clear twine if you'd rather. So this is where a cutting board comes in really useful, or a bit of wood or a bit of cereal packet or something, as we're going to force the needle through the top of the concertina. So I'm just pushing it back down onto the board to help push it through. So there we go, it's through now. I'm now going to take the thread and I'm going to double it up and re-thread the needle with it doubled. And then we're then going to be able to put it through the middle of the wings. But before we do that, we need to fold it. And to fold it, I found that it works easier if we just gently curl it around your finger, just to encourage it to be folding in half. So you can just fold it in half like that. And then we're then going to take the needle with the double bit of thread and push it right through the middle of the concertina. Now, we're now going to put some glue on the inside of that concertina of the wings. And then we're then going to fold it in half over and around the body and give it a really good press so the glue sticks. And then we're then going to thread on a bead. So mine's about 2 centimetres to make the head. So just like that, and you'll see it's a bit wobbly. So you're just going to take a glue dot, or you could use a spot of stronger glue or a bit of double-sided tape just on the top of the wing concertina, just to hold the head in place a bit. And then we can just tie the thread in a knot to create a hanging loop, and then we can open up the angel's wings and its body just like that, and there we have a finished angel. So you can play around with using different sizes of paper. So on the tree I've got some tiny little angels which were made with smaller pieces of paper. So the main thing to remember is to keep the ratio the same, that one is to a ratio of 1 to 2 and the other one's to a ratio of 1 to 1, and then you can adjust the width of the concertinas accordingly. So those are some tiny ones. I've made one out of tracing paper, and with this one, before I assembled it, I just cut some little notches into the concertina like you would if you were making a snowflake, and angled the bottom a bit so that when it's all opened out, it's got a slightly lacy effect to the skirt of the angel. So that's one thing you can do. And then I've put a smaller one on the top of a gift box, so that's quite a nice way to use one. And I've also got one hanging on a card, so it's just secured inside with a little bit of tape. So the recipient's got a 2-in-1 card there because they've got the card, and then when they finish they can take the angel off and hang it on a tree or somewhere. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this, and that it will inspire you to go away and make lots of angels of your own. Thank you very much for watching.
Good morning, we're in Natalia's kitchen and today she's making gingerbread houses.
Start by gathering all our ingredients and getting going with it. So we're going to need some honey, some butter, some caster sugar, golden caster sugar, and also some eggs, and that's the bit we're going to do on the hob, and then we'll mix the dry ingredients. Get my teeth in. Alright, so first I'm going to weigh what we need. So 80 grams of butter. Let's see. Okay, so then I'm going to put 200 grams of honey. Here we go. And then we need to add to that 100 grams of golden brown sugar. So here we go. There we go. So what we want to do now is to put it on low on the cooker and stir it until all the sugar has dissolved and the butter's melted. But we don't want to overheat it. We just want to make sure that it all happens slowly because we're going to mix eggs in it afterwards. Right, so now it's all dissolved, melted. I'm going to turn the heat off underneath it. We don't want to heat it anymore, and we're going to leave this to cool down. Now my pan's got a heavy base, so it will stay quite warm anyway, but I don't want it to get any hotter. So while this is going down, cooling down, I am going to weigh the dry ingredients. So first we're going to need 550 grams of plain flour. We don't want self-raising because we are going to add baking powder to it. So it's quite a bit, 550. There we go, nearly there. Sorted. Then we want to add the baking powder, which is 3 teaspoons. Now you don't need fancy spoons. If you have measuring teaspoons, that's fine. But if you don't, what you want to do is just give it a shake so it's not a big heap on top of it. And that is how we do it the Swiss way. We're not too worried about it. This is for making at home with the kids, so you don't need to do it like perfect spot on. As long as you're nearly there, it's good. Now this recipe is Swiss, so we're using dessert spoons for measuring, which might be strange because normally the Brits use tablespoons, but use dessert spoons for measuring the cocoa. So we want 3 of these. There we go, so we've got 3 dessert spoons of this. Okay, so we need some mixed spice in there. Now this is my own mix, and I can give you the recipe for it. It will be with all the information. But you can actually also buy it in a supermarket just as mixed spice. That's just the name it has. So you can look out for that. You can be as generous as you want. You know, it depends how flavoursome you like it. And this is the mix when it's all finished. Now, good thing to remember, you may want to sieve the cocoa. otherwise you may end up with lumps. Now this is ready. We're going to go back to our butter mix and honey mix, and what we need to do now is we're going to add eggs. So we're going to crack one at a time in there. So we're going to get 2 whole eggs. So there's number 1. Give it a good whisk. And then we're going to put another whole one in there now. Here goes. So that should have cooled. And we want, the last one, we just want an egg yolk. So 2.5 eggs basically. So I'm going to leave the white here. Sorry about the noise. This egg yolk, do not throw away the white because we'll need it for the royal icing. So just put it aside in a cup, ready for later. Okay, so now we have our mix, we have our well, and we're going to pour this into it. There we go, in the middle. The idea of the well is that it helps for stirring and mixing because you have flour all the way up the side rather than the liquid in covering the top. So I'll start mixing it with a whisk because it's already dirty. Okay, now they'll get a point where you can't use your whisk anymore, so the best way is to get your hands dirty. All right, you want to create a dough with this, so keep working at it until you get something that works. Now it is sticky mess, but it is fun. Your kids will love it. I've taken out my dough from the bowl and it is really sticky. I've had to wash my hands. It's a bit of a mess, but what you can do is if you stick it in some cling film, which you'll need to go in the oven, you can actually knead it a little. Obviously you have to keep moving the cling film, but you can achieve that smoothness by doing this without getting it all in your fingers. So do a little bit of this and then stick it in the fridge for 3 hours at least, or even better, overnight, and you'll have something really nice to work with when you need it. So in true Blue Peter fashion, I have made one last night, so it's come out now. I've also got here some molds for cutting out. If you don't have any of these, I mean I only got these in Aldi, so they may come around again this year, look out for them, but if you don't have any of these, you can cut it out, cut some shapes out on some, let's say, cereal box. It doesn't have to be big. I can put the dimensions of these on the sheet as well, so you can have that information. And this is what we'll use. Go. I just want to show you these. We need to roll the dough to a thickness of about 5 or 6 millimeters. Now to get it evenly rolled out, you need some sort of support. Now you can get posh rolling pins, but mine is not. I've had it many years. So what we use in Switzerland, we use battens, wooden battens. The flat ones are slightly easier, but these are 4 millimeters, and I want, I couldn't find 5 millimeters, so I'm going to try it with these 6. So these are round wooden dowels. They cost about less than £1 really for one. Cut it in half, and you'll have plenty of space. So if you put them either side of your dough, when you roll, eventually you will get to the height of the dowels. So this is what we're doing. Now if they move too much around, you can stabilize them with a little bit of dough or a little bit of blue tack, anything you have at hand, just have a go. But you can see I'm already starting to hit that height, and you can tell because when nothing seems to move, then you're done. The elves are at it again. I'm sure you can hear it. All right. Turn it every now and then so that it stops dragging underneath. So as you can see, you get some marks here, and that happens when we drag or pull. Now I don't want all this white flour on it, but we're gonna see. I should have enough to do one. There we go. All right, press it down, and that can go on the board. I'm going to with a damp brush, I'll probably just wipe this off. So here we are. I've got the sides of the house ready, and what I want just to show you is that when we move the dough, once it's rolled out, it can go out of shape like here. So what you want to do is get something straight, like a long knife, and just tap gently alongside it to make sure that we haven't gone sideways, because for assembling, like I can tell here, we're not quite straight. For assembling, you'll find it difficult if the sides cannot fit together. So a good way of doing it is, I'm making a mess, that's fine, is to just make sure that they are straight. So these have got to go in the oven at 140 degrees for 9 minutes. What's important to remember is that your oven warms up very quickly potentially, but that's the air. So we need the oven itself, the walls, to be warm. So make sure you leave it on for at least 15-20 minutes before you put these in. So here they go. 9 minutes, and I'm going to cut the roof now. So these are the extra bits that I'm going to be baking. I've got some Christmas trees, a snowman, and a couple of bits for a front lawn, onto which I will then obviously prop up the Christmas trees and the snowman. They don't have to be perfect, because I'll end up covered in icing sugar and royal icing decorations, and your lawn can look rustic, because as you end up re-rolling the dough with your leftovers, it can get a little bit crinkly. So don't worry about it. Those finishing touches just look part of the deal. So they need to be cooked for only 6 minutes, because they're much smaller in size. So time's up. Let's have a look. There we go. They're off. Here they are. Lovely. Very nice. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a little bit of milk in a cup and get a pastry brush, and I'm just going to brush them with a little milk. That will give them a nice shine, because at the moment they're looking a little bit grey. So here goes the milk. Find a pastry brush. Mine's an old-fashioned one, but you can use whatever you want that does the job for you. And just gently brush it. Now I just want to show you the cooked, baked gingerbread. Now this is how it should look. I don't know if you can see, but this has a little dome on it. That's how this should come out. However, I have slightly undercooked the main parts, because as you can see, it started rising on the edges and then it has collapsed when it's come out, which means I haven't cooked it long enough. So the egg white I had from earlier is here, and I'm going to put it in a bowl. We're going to make the royal icing. I'm going to lightly whip it. We're not trying to aim to make snow with it, just getting a bit of air in it. So it's just gone frothy. That's all it is. And then a spoon at a time or so, we will add the icing sugar. Never do it the other way around, where you put the sugar first and then add the liquid. Always do liquid and add sugar to it. So I'm going to keep doing that until all the icing sugar is in the egg mix. So here's our royal icing. It's ready to pipe. It is really thick, but not so thick that it couldn't be used for piping. So now we're going to try and decorate this. So if you get a piping bag and we snip the end of it, you want to snip enough that something comes out, but not too much. So if you go too close to the bottom, it won't come out. So we'll go probably about here. So 2-3 millimeters. Now, I'm not an expert on piping, but I do all right with it. So at home, don't feel bad if your experiments don't work out quite as you think. Just have a go. It's all about the fun. So if you turn it at the top so you have something to hold on to, like this, then you can put some of your icing into it. Oh, so I'm going to put a bit, but not too much, and then I'll see how I'm getting on with it. Okay, so what I've done, I've put my royal icing into the fridge for 10 minutes. That's helped settling it a bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to pipe our design. Now, we want it to be as straight as we can. In order to achieve that, is we're going to place our piping tube, bag, whatever you're using there. And then we're just going to lift it off the cookie in order to create a straight line. Now, don't move too fast or it will break the line, but this way you'll get as straight a line as possible. If you're on a curve, you hold it up in the air and go around. There we go. And then carry on gently. And then this way you should get a good pattern. So up a bit to turn the corner. Oh, I'm quite impressed with myself. This is quite good. It's getting a little bit harder because I'm going against myself. I am no professional, be assured. But if I can manage this, so can you. Windows. Here we are. They don't have to be perfect, as long as they look like the real thing. You should get the idea. Always stop squeezing before you need to, so that you finish as neatly as possible. Okay, so now we're going to do the roof, and I'm going to show you how to do the tiles pattern. So if you add a layer of your icing, if you find it too runny, you can always add a little bit of sieved icing sugar into the mix to harden it, or leave it in the fridge a bit longer, but covered so that it doesn't dry. And what you want to do is, with a flat palette knife, you just want to press down to make an indentation, and this way it'll look like you have got tiles. It doesn't matter how it works out, as long as you get some sort of pattern that's rounded at the bottom. As you run out of icing, you just add another layer. So here's the roof more or less done, and I'm going to just drop little stars on it to give it a little bit of decoration and colour. Now it's really important that all the piping fully dries before you try and assemble the house. Okay, so we're going to show you how to assemble the house now. The glasses are here to help pop up your pieces. Now these haven't been decorated yet. Normally leave it all to dry, but just in order to be able to show you this, I'm going to do that. So you can use the glasses to prop up the different parts you need, like this. And then you will need your sides. So what we will do is we will ice the sides, and then we'll put the longer part of the house to it. So I'll take this away for a minute just to give it a layer of icing. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit messy, preferably not on the front, but on the back is certainly not an issue. but you want to have something for your gingerbread to stick to. So here we go, that's the glue. Let's put it all over there. Right, so if I stick this between my two glasses, it holds it up, so you don't need another pair of hands. And then if you take your side, what you will then do is place it against it. But I'll do it on that side so you can see better. All right, and then again, use a glass to hold it in place and push it together gently at the edge. All right, there we go. And we can keep this glass here to keep it into place. There we go. Now what we would need to do, in fact I'm going to move that glass, this one, is we're going to reinforce the inside by applying some more icing to the middle. Now that's a little bit like you would do around your bath, your window, when you're trying to do some DIY. You can actually use a finger as well, if it's clean, there to help you smooth it in the gap, and that will help seal it. And you will need to do that for all your sides. So when you're happy with it, you'll then put your glass back here, and you need to leave that support until all of it has dried. Now the other thing you can do that I'm going to show you is you can use toothpicks to help them stay together. So obviously you don't want a whole one, so you might want to snap it in half, but you can poke, might be shorter actually, you can poke a bit of toothpick into the gingerbread like so, and then as you put the other side up against it, it will poke through it and it will give it extra stability. Now just remember when you eat it not to eat the toothpick, but apart from that it will give it a bit of strength. So then again, strengthen it on the inside. Nobody sees on the inside, so you don't need to worry about having a messy reinforcement. Sorry, I've just gone a bit mad. This is what happens when you do it when it's wet. All right, so make sure it's got all the props it needs. Put this on the inside to hold it there. Okay, and then when this is ready and you have all four sides and they've dried, you'll be able to fix the roof. So for the roofs, you'll do the same thing. You will ice it, but again, you can use toothpick. It's just gone under my board. Oh, here we go. You can use a toothpick. So it's easier if you put the bit you've broken first in, and then your roof will easily prick into that. With a load of icing on the side, it will make a wonderful job of fixing it. Okay, same thing for the snowman. If you poke the blunt edge into it, so you can then poke it into your front garden, and then you can dust it with sieved icing sugar to make it look like covered in snow. Okay, so when everything's dried, when you've been able to assemble it, you've strengthened it with your toothpick, you can dust it with icing sugar. If you put it through a sieve, you'll get that lovely sprinkly effect on it. You can use sweets, like you can see here. You can use stars, you can use silver balls. It's up to you how much fun you have with it. But there you are. It's not a perfect one, it's not a professional one, but it's mine and I've done it and I'm proud of it.
Christmas paper, it could be double-sided or not, so you can have it white on one side and tattle on the other. It still works quite nicely. So Christmas paper works. any type of paper really. So just choose the kind of colours and patterns that you want to use. I think tracing paper that was used for the angels might also look quite nice on these actually. I might try some of those myself later. So what we're going to do is you're going to need to have, for one bauble, you're going to need to have one 5 centimetre wide strip of paper that is 45 centimetres long. Now, obviously, these measurements, you can do what you like. If you want to make something bigger, wider, shorter, go for it. But these are the ones that I know work for this, okay? So if you want slightly smaller ones, because that is quite a large decoration, really. If you want something smaller, then just make them narrower and shorter. That will still work. Okay, so I'm going to start by showing you how you get started. So first thing, on one end of each paper strip, to get you going with the kind of concertina thing, you need to measure 2 centimetres from the end up to 6 centimetres. You've got 3 sets of marks. So you just use a ruler and on each edge, mark out 2 centimetres, 4 centimetres, 6 centimetres, and again on the other side of the page. And you do the same thing on your thin strips of paper. So on one end, 2 centimetres, 4 centimetres, 6 centimetres. So I'll give you a little bit of time to do that, and I need to do that on these thin ones as well. In fact, actually, you only need to mark it on one of the thin strips because I've come up with a cheats way of doing things quicker. I thought about it in the car on the way here and thought that would be easier. So just on one narrow strip and on the wider strip. Okay, and once you've done that, you're then simply going to fold this into a concertina. So at the 2 centimetre mark, you're going to fold it back on itself, lining up the edges as far as possible so that it stays straight. So you fold it one way and then you fold it the other way and try and keep it level, but please don't panic if it's not, because it won't be the end of the world if it's slightly out. Nobody is going to notice when it's on your tree, unless they're very pernickety, in which case they probably shouldn't be looking at your tree. So if we just keep going and folding.
Carmen, while you're doing that, somebody's just asked, how long and wide are the other strips?
Okay, very good point. So the narrow strips, 3.5 centimetres, or actually this one's 3 centimetres. So 3 to 3.5 centimetres wide by 45 centimetres long again. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mention that before. So work your way down, folding, folding, folding. And this is something that would be quite nice to do just sitting in front of the television watching a Christmas film, because you don't have to think about it too much and you won't be bored. But you just work your way down to the bottom and yeah, until you get something like this. And this is my Blue Peter moment. Here is one I made earlier. So something along these lines. So lovely, a little accordion there. Anyway, so we've got one of those. And then you're going to do the same thing with the narrow strips, but this is my cheats thing. So if you put the one that you've made the marks on top of the other one, you can fold 2 at the same time. Excellent. You could even try 3 or 4. Who knows? That might work too. So you put them on top of each other, fold it back and forwards and back and forwards and back and forwards. Okay, until you've got the concertina right to the bottom. And try and keep it level and straight. But as I say, doesn't really matter too much. Okay. So we keep going. And you just need to occasionally just make sure that they're still adjusted and level with each other so they don't separate, and just squeeze the ends. Obviously, the thicker the card, the more of a pinch it needs to have a sharp edge. Okay, are we nearly there? Thumbs up, anybody? Yes, maybe. Okay. Lovely. Right, so once you've concertinaed them, the next thing is to start to put it all together, and you can use a hot glue gun for this. The next bit could be, you could use a hot glue gun, or you could, to be honest, use some double-sided tape or some Pritt stick. But Pritt stick, if you use Pritt stick, you just be prepared to stick it together and leave it for an hour so that it's not still setting whilst you're trying to do the bit after that. Hot glue gun is the quickest sort of contact adhesive, so that you don't have to wait, basically. So you've got your 2 and you've got your 1 wide one, 2 narrow ones and 1 wide one. So the next bit is to glue this into a circle like this. So try and glue it so that it continues the zigzag all the way around rather than gluing it like that. Okay, so glue it so it continues the zigzag. Can you all see that kind of okay? I hope so. Anyway, so you've got that. So you're going to put a bit of glue there and then stick it together. But if you are using a hot glue gun, please be really careful, because squeezing 2 bits of paper together with hot glue between is still going to burn you. So best thing to do is use a pencil, glue it first down the centre, and then just press it in with a pencil. So I'm going to just place it there and then use a pencil just to press it down so I don't burn myself. Okay, so you end up with this sort of loop of zigzag. And you do the same thing with the small ones. So glue those bits together. Make sure you know where you're going to glue first, so that it's going to work. And then glue them together. And use your pencil to press it down. Any other questions, Gaynor? Do you know?
No other questions, unless anybody would want to put it in the chat. If anybody's got any questions, then I can pass them on to Carmen.
Great. Another thing that I thought of as another way of decorating them afterwards, I did think it would be quite nice if you got your little concertina bits once they're glued together and rolled the ends in PVA glue and then rolled them into glitter. And then you would have the glittery zigzags if you're into glitter. But who isn't at Christmas? Okay, so there we go. So you've ended up with 2 narrow thingies and 1 wide one, like that. And then the next bit, if there's anything to be described as tricky, this is it, but it's not really tricky, so don't panic. So this is what you need to do. You need to get your zigzaggy circle, pinch sort of 2 of them opposite each other, like that. Then put it on the table and push them towards each other on the table so that all the points in the centre come together like that. Okay. Once it's down there, actually, before you do that, I forgot to mention this, you might need to just cut yourself little squares of the same bit of paper, just tiny bits, because this will avoid you burning yourself with the hot glue. So I'll just show you. So once you've pushed it, I'll say this again, pinch it like that, put it on the table and then push it into the middle like this. So it becomes like a star shape. You then glue down put loads of glue, the more the merrier, to be honest. And push it all together with your hands. But then use one of these little squares, or it could be a circle, it could be something that's come out the end of a hole punch, whatever. Put it on top of the glue that you just glued in and use a pencil just to hold it in place. Sing yourself "O Little Town of Bethlehem" or something like that whilst you're waiting for it to dry. Whatever you like. So just, wait there for a moment, sing to yourself or do something else, but hold it down. Then turn it over and do the same thing on the back of it. I've turned it over too quickly, but same thing on the back, bit of glue, little square of card. So it's going to hold it in place. And you do that for the big one. Use a pencil to hold it down without sticking it to the pencil like I have. Okay. The next thing is you do it for the other 2 as well, so the 2 small ones. However, with the small ones, you are going to add the little squares top and bottom for one of them. The other one, you're going to add the little square on the top and hold it in place for the bottom of it. But for the top of it, just squeeze glue into the top and leave it to set, because you're going to need somewhere to press the ribbon into to make the loop. And if you've stuck a square on top, that's not going to be particularly easy to to glue it on. Okay, so little square goes on the top and bottom of that one, the top and bottom of one of the small ones. I've got bits of glue on, and just the top, just the bottom of the other one. Okay, so you end up with 3 things that look something like this. Okay, and then you're going to glue them together as a sandwich like this, with the glue gun again. So you get yourself one of the small ones, and it depends on which way up you want to see the decoration as to which way up you glue them together. So put some glue in the centre of that, glue the big one on top of the small one, and hold it in place for a little while. And then you do the same thing with the top one. Okay, like that. How am I doing for time? Am I all right? Okay.
You've got 2 minutes. Somebody just asked while you're waiting doing that, does it have to be a glue gun, or have you tried other glues?
The glue gun works best for the bit where you do this, where you turn it in and have to do it, just because it needs to be fairly instant. Otherwise, you could be sitting there quite dull for a while. But the rest of it could be PVA glue, to be honest. That would also work if you're willing to wait for it, let it to set, to one side, put it to one side. And then after you've sandwiched them together, you can then just choose a bit of ribbon and kind of put it down the little zigzaggy pieces and glue it in place. Again, PVA or hot glue gun will work for that too. Okay. And then hopefully you've made a little decoration. Okay, so good luck, everybody. I hope you enjoy it. And I did have a question from the last group, which was, could you make them any size? Yes, could be 45 metres long if you wanted to make something really dramatic in your neighbourhood. Okay, have a lovely Christmas, everybody, and hope you enjoyed it.
Now, we're going to be making a glitter ball, and if you're going to do the making along with me, the thing you need to do straight away is make sure that you have got a balloon blown up that is about 7 centimetres in diameter. Okay, so if you're going to be doing that, I'll explain the other things that you need to have with you tonight. You need to have some polyfiller. That's the powdered sort, not the ready-made. So polyfiller, besides your packet of balloons. You could do with some wool, because when you have blown your balloon up, you need just a short length of wool around the neck of the balloon, because this is going to end up very wet and soggy, and you're going to need to hang it up to dry. Okay, you're going to need some string, and the string you need it's really the cheap stuff, so it's very soft and it's quite cottony. And you're going to need a bowl, some water, and a tablespoon. Okay, here we go. So we need about 4 tablespoonfuls of polyfiller, kind of levelish, and oops, that's a small one. And this amount of mixture will do about 3 balloons this size. Now to this you need to add 3 tablespoonfuls of water to begin with, to make sure that you haven't got too much in there, and you need to mix that round till all the water has been absorbed into the polyfiller. Okay, how are we doing, Gaynor? Have we got any questions?
No, no questions so far.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody's actually making along with you.
Nobody
They are.
is.
They can.
Have we got somebody making?
I don't know. I'm just looking. Is anybody there making? You can wave at me if you are.
Okay. I need a little bit more water. It does need to be reasonably soft. And then the fun begins. So, it sounds like a huge amount, but you need about 4 meters of string. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, you need to guide this down into the polyfiller because you do not want it to get into a mess and a tangle, because polyfillered string in a tangle is only going to go in the bin. You're not really going to be able to do much about it. So down into the polyfiller, and then hold on to the end and gently work the string into the polyfiller until the string is completely covered. And so is this last little bit as well. Okay. Right. Now, take your balloon, and this long white worm comes up out of the bowl, and you wrap it round the balloon. Quite randomly, but reasonably evenly, so that you get a good covering of string over the balloon. There we go, almost finished. And then make sure that the end sticks down over another line of string. Okay, so now you've got your balloon and it's all ready to hang up to dry. Now it's going to take about 24 hours, and I hung mine on my clothes area, and it took about 24 hours in a fairly, in a reasonably warm room. Nothing too hot, but reasonably warm. Okay, I've just got to wash my hands before we get on to the next bit. Okay, any questions? No questions. That's fine. Okay. So, in the immortal words of Blue Peter, here is one I made earlier. So, you need to make sure that where the polyfiller is quite thick, that's become really white. It's not grey, because this next bit, you're going to end up with a mess. You can either use a pin, or you can just cut the neck of the balloon off just below the knot. Whoops. And there we are. Our balloon is deflated. Use your scissors to pull it out. There you are. Now you might want to tidy it up a little bit. You might have some bits of polyfiller that have, like here and here, just have a little sort of fiddle with them. If the end of your string is sticking out, you can just cut that off. Then you need to have another piece of wool on it, or piece of string, because you're going to paint it and then hang it up again to dry. Okay? Now, paints. Gold and silver paints, they're craft paints. As you can see from this one, it kind of like sprays everything. Be careful because I have sprayed my kitchen table as well. And it does say that they should be used at room temperature. I did buy some really cheap paint and it used half a can to not do a very good job. So I went out and I bought these better paints, which do give you a much nicer finish. Now, because it needs to be done indoors, I found a big box and I used to use as a spray booth. So I held the ball, where are we? I held the ball in the box and I sprayed it in there. You can feel the particles, that the propellant coming around your hands, but I didn't get anything up my arms. I just put it on the table. Okay, then hang it back up to dry, and that would be about, that would be probably a couple of hours, it'll be dry. Okay, so I have been making lots of them, as you can see behind me, and I made some as small lampshades. I just made, didn't blow the balloon up quite so much, and I've made them around these LED lights. Now, if you're going to do that, please make sure that, well, these are battery operated LED lights, but make sure that they don't get hot because this is now quite flammable. So that could be one way you could use them. You can hang them on your Christmas tree, or you could put them out on the shelf with other things as kind of like ornaments. They look lovely in a bowl, perhaps with some sprayed walnuts and things like that, or you can put them together with some old baubles in like a fruit bowl to make a table decoration with them.
Jan, I do have a question. Can I ask you now while I remember? Somebody just asked us, where do you get your polyfiller from?
Okay, so not wishing to advertise at all, but I did buy the whole lot from Wilko. Okay, so in fact the polyfiller was the most difficult to source, but you can get it. It depends which supermarkets you shop in. Some of the larger supermarkets will sell them. If they sell paint, they'll probably sell polyfiller. But as I say, I bought it all in Wilko's. As you could see, that was the name of on the tins, and it all came from there. So it's not, but do make sure, that it is the powdered sort, because the other sort you think, oh yeah, that'll work. There's some sort of plasticizing in the other sort that doesn't break down in the water.
So you can just hang them, can't you, on your, like a bauble, just hang them with some.
Like these?
Yeah,
just
put them on your tree.
Yeah. I suppose I didn't do that one because the first time I made them to go on a tree. I think it's a very old Blue Peter idea. I'm not sure that it was from when I watched Blue Peter as a child. It might have been from when I watched Blue Peter with my children, but it's probably at least 35 years old.
And I'm now going to talk to Gaynor Brown. And Gaynor Brown has been involved with the Christmas craft team for a number of years, and she's kindly agreed to chat to me. So I'll just wait for Gaynor to appear next to me on the screen. You're there.
Can I just clarify? I'm part of the Christmas craft team, but I never do the crafts.
No, you're a bit like
I'm not very crafty, so.
No, you're like me. We just wander around and talk to people, don't we? Normally, get away with actually doing the activities, which is good. Gaynor, thanks for chatting to me now. Just for those people who don't know you, and there will be a lot on the screen who do, but some who don't know you, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Gaynor. I'm married to Pete, who Yeah, married to Pete. We've got 5 children. 3 of my own. I've got 2 stepchildren, 3 grandchildren. 1 will be 10 on Saturday, and then 7-year-old and a 1-year-old. Originally from Cardiff, but I've lived in Bournemouth for over 30 years. I teach swimming part-time. Just started doing casual work and examining vigilator. I'm also involved in schoolwork, being governor and a trustee of sort of a school and a multi-academy trust. So I keep myself busy.
So we've got 2 Welsh girls on the screen.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing like it. Now, Gaynor, at the start, I actually mentioned that we're calling this season as a church a Christmas like no other. But actually for you, the past 3 Christmases have been very different, not only for you, but also for your family, because your daughter, Kerry, was diagnosed with cancer a couple of years back. And very sadly, Kerry died last March. Just tell us a little bit about the story.
Right, I mean, there is a lot, but just briefly, basically, November 17, we just actually, Pete and I had thought in September, all of a sudden we were on our own. All our children had left. We thought this was a new era, a new chapter of our life. Our youngest had just started university in Cardiff. And all of a sudden, in November, Kerry had been struggling with headaches in the summer. She'd gone to the opticians, gone to the doctors, they'd given her glasses, they said infected sinuses. And she went back and just said, no, there's something wrong. And basically, they found a tumour. And after a biopsy, they said she had alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma, which basically was a cancerous tumour, a very rare form of cancer, in her nasal cavity and just right under her eye. And really, the next few weeks were a blur. You can imagine it was out of the blue, not expected. She'd been well, fit, healthy, playing netball, going out. So Christmas 17, it was really a Christmas of the unknown. We didn't know what the future was going to hold. We didn't know what we were going to do. And all the family came for Christmas. But we were all extra cautious because Kerry was due to start chemo on December the 27th. And in fact, I look back now, I laugh because Pete, bless him, didn't feel very well on Christmas Day. So I isolated him in the bedroom because I didn't want Kerry to catch anything. And he ended up having Christmas dinner and opening his presents via a computer, a video screen, which I know a lot of us have to do now anyway, but we sort of had a foretaste of it earlier on. So we went up the next 6 months. It was a grueling 6 months. Kerry undertook sort of 9 cycles of chemo. I lived half my time in London looking after her and part-time down here. We also ended up going to America for proton beam therapy for 10 weeks with just Pete and myself, which was hard work. But yeah, and in the June, we just thought it was worth it. She had really hard type of chemo that the nurses called it the hardcore. And she struggled with it, but she had a goal. She was going to get through because she could be treated. In the June, July, we were told basically the treatment hadn't worked. And basically, they agreed in the end to do an operation. The operation was going to be, they were reluctant to do it because how near it was to the optic nerve. And the operation, as far as the surgeon was concerned, was a success. And that was in the December. And basically, December 18 was a Christmas, I put a Christmas of hope. We had a great hope that 2019 would be a far better year for us and our lives would get back to normal. We hadn't had completely all clear, but when she went back in January, they said, yeah, everything seems to be clear. And she was basically told to go and enjoy life. So she started back to work, but only a few weeks later, and it was February half term, we were told that the cancer returned. She'd gone for a normal routine scan, and they just sort of turned around and said, we found it in your lungs now. And she was basically told that it was treatable in the sense they could hopefully contain it for a while, but it wasn't curable. And the treatment she could have was, I put it like putting a finger in a dam. That's what it was like. It was trying to hold the cancer back for as long as possible. Kerry tried the chemo. She struggled with it. And after 2 cycles and bouts in hospital, she made the brave decision to stop all treatment. She made that decision basically because in her mind, quality of life was far better than quantity. She wasn't frightened of dying. She had an energy, for those who know her would know she had an energy for her friends, but she also had a love for Jesus and had an assurance of where she was going. So Christmas 19 was, I would say it was a Christmas of joy. It was our last Christmas together, but Kerry absolutely loved Christmas. She loved the family together, and a time was spent basically with the family. We didn't have lavish presents. It was just a time of being. Though I must admit, we did borrow a snow machine and had a snowstorm in our garden on Christmas Day, which was a surprise to everybody. And the neighbours all came out wondering what was happening. And then in March, 21st of March, Kerry passed away. Thankfully, it was basically a few days before lockdown. Something she would have hated. She loved her family, she loved her friends, she loved going out. And I think it was something she would have struggled with. But she died surrounded by family and friends. So yeah, that was our last 3 Christmases together.
Now, obviously, there have been times for you, and there still will be, times of intense pain and sadness. So what has helped you as Kerry's mum to handle each day and the grief that you're feeling?
I think in a way for me, looking back now, the grief probably started when she was first diagnosed. I know sort of we always had that hope, and I remember thinking, they're sending us to the United States for proton. They're not going to spend all that money on us if it's not curable. I really had that in my heart and my mind, but it probably did start then. And the one thing that was comforting me was the way Kerry lived her life. I think during an illness, it was a bit of a joke because during an illness, she had more holidays than I have ever had, or probably will have in my lifetime. Every time we went to see the consultant would say, well, where have you now been, Kerry? And she had a passion for life. I mean, anybody who knows Kerry would have known that her diary would have been completely full. She had coffee dates, breakfast dates, lunch breaks, you name it. Everything was in there, jam-packed. And even in the last month, the whiteboard in her room was full of a timetable of the visitors. Kerry she just had an energy of life. And she wasn't looking, she had the way of looking at it. She didn't look for the light in the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel. She looked for the light in the tunnel. She decided that the cancer, she wasn't going to be defined by cancer, that this was just a blip in her life to eternity. And I'm not saying that she found life easy, but she had a mantra, #ChooseJoy. And every day she would try to choose joy, even in the dark days. And there were really, really dark days. I remember in America where she had chemo and proton beam therapy, and she was in a room and we were on our own. We ended up in A&E, we ended up in hospital. I had no one to turn to. Everything was strange. But she even still tried to choose joy in every aspect of life. And for me, that's given me a comfort. But I've also learned to enjoy the simple things in life. The simple pleasures of just looking at the sun shining through the clouds, the sea rolling. This afternoon I was just down at the beach and I could see the sun coming through the clouds. It looked as if the Purbex were on fire and there was this dark cloud going across. It was absolutely amazing. But I've learned to enjoy those little things in life. Why? Sometimes people say, well, why didn't God sort this out? And I did ask God why. I cried out a number of times to ask God why, but I probably didn't wait for him to give me the answer. I basically just turned around to God and said, please, God, give me the strength to keep going. Give me the strength to keep going and basically he helped me, carried me on that journey. And this is a broken world, and I just felt that he held my hand through this. And not only did he carry me through, but he also gave me a hope and a strength. I think I can only describe it as an internal joy. And I'm not meaning that a joy where you're all happy, smiling thing, but something that's really internal and an inner peace. And yeah, I just think he just gave me that comfort and that hope. And basically, when Kerry passed away, we really felt at peace. And that wasn't just myself. She was surrounded by her family and friends. And I mean, it was just, yeah, the last moment, her head sort of turned up as if she was looking towards Jesus. I mean, that may be just the way it was, but we just really felt at peace about everything.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Gaynor, for sharing that with such honesty, really, you know, the honest expression of emotion and grief and sadness, and yet that hope that you were able to see in it all. Now, you mentioned earlier that Kerry loved Christmas, and what about the Christmas message as we think about it right now? What helps you to keep trusting God in all of this? Because there will be hard days, won't there? This goes on. Grief is a process that doesn't come to an end quickly. But what about the Christmas story just helps you to keep trusting God in your difficulty?
Christmas gives me a time to reflect, a time to think about the real meaning of Christmas. What do we celebrate at Christmas? We celebrate the birth of Jesus. And it's Jesus that's given me that hope and that assurance. At Christmas, we will remember Kerry. We'll remember her with tears in our eyes, but also joy in our hearts. I just feel that without Jesus, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would be struggling for months, years and years. For many, many years, and I don't know why, but years ago, my favourite verse in the Bible is one that can be found right at the end, right near the end, and it tells us about the new heaven and the new earth, where God himself will be with his people, and he will be their God, and he will wipe every tear from their eyes, as there be no more death or mourning or crying or pain. The old order has passed away, and that's been my verse, my go-to verse, basically, because I know that in the end there's a better place to come, that one day we will be together with God and there'll be no more tears for anyone. Everybody will be together at peace. And yeah, I just find that to me can do that. And my wish at Christmas period is that for all of us is to reflect on why we celebrate Christmas, why we give Christmas presents, because life can be tough. And I'm sure that many of you have been or are going or will go through difficult periods in your life. But with Jesus, we can have this hope and the joy that in the end, everything will be perfect. Life is hard and we never ever know what's going around the corner. We hear sad things every day, don't we? And things that happen to us life. But you can find joy in the good times and the hard times. And I just hope that you can all find some sort of joy this Christmas. Because for all of us, it'll be a Christmas like no other, won't it? But for some of us, and I hope and pray that for all of us, we have a hope like no other as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Gaynor, on behalf of all of us for sharing that with us. Really inspiring, and thank you for pointing us to the hope that we can have when we have faith, when we can have the courage to face suffering and, as in Kerry's case, to face death. And yet we have that sure certainty of heaven and eternal life. We really appreciate you talking to us tonight.